Hey there, welcome to Authentically Raw. I'm your host, Jamie Berris. Failure is failing to show up for yourself. If you haven't listened to episode 43, Failure is Not an Option with Casey Smith, I highly encourage you to do so. I've been thinking about the episode ever since we recorded it, and I had asked her near the end what, kind of her life lesson or her big mantra is, and it is basically failure is not an option. And boy, was that ever tested for Casey during the pandemic and actually quite all the way through 2021. Casey is the president of Serendipity Media and publisher of West Michigan Woman Magazine. And during the pandemic, they lost 2/3 of their business overnight, and it continued to dwindle through 2021. And although she did keep going, and we are so thankful that she did, she really had many days, many moments that she was telling herself, I'm done. I want out. And which brings me to today's topic about failure and what does failure mean to us? What does failure do to us? What does failure do to our confidence? And when we feel like we failed, how do we rebuild that? How do we keep going? How do we keep growing? And how do we keep showing up? And I titled this episode, Failure is Failing to Show Up for Yourself, because I think it's really important that we get clear on the fact that failure is also defined by us. And so is success, because we often feel like failures because we might not have a certain thing, or we haven't attained a certain goal, or we don't have the things that we think we want or we should have, when in reality, those aren't even the things that we truly want, we truly desire. It's more about what the outside world thinks success is, what the outside world thinks failure is. And what we do is fail to go inward and ask ourselves, what is success to me? What does it feel like? Because you can't fail if you don't even know what you're trying to succeed at. And that looks different for everyone. And it leads me back to the point of my interview with Casey. She, during this, downward spiral of 20 and 21, she really depended on her leadership consultant, because so often she admits she does not ever really acknowledge her feelings. She doesn't put a label on them, and she skips over it. She goes right into problem-solving mode, and a lot of times, all of those feelings and those desires and those needs and those wants, they just bubble up, they get clouded, and until we sit down and really figure out and regroup, what are my goals? How can I recenter? How do I redirect? What doesn't work for me? What does work for me? And a couple of the other things we talked on was getting back to the basics of goal setting. And that is what she did with the help of her leadership consultant. But we don't all have leader consultants in the back pocket. So how do we be a leader of our own life? How do we be our own agent? How do we go inward and self-check? And really, I think I talked about this in the balance versus burnout episode, about going in and prioritizing what is important to us. Because if we don't know what our vision is, what our goals are, what we want our life to look like and feel like, what do we want our family life to look like? What do we want our relationships to look like? What do we want our work life to look like, to feel like? If we don't know these things, we are setting ourselves up for failure and not success. So when we can define, it's really going back to basics. It's when we can define our vision and our dreams and our goals for our life, whether it is personally, professionally, and I say this all the time, spiritually, relationally, wherever it is, if we can't define those, we're never going to feel that sense of meaning and purpose fulfillment, and ultimately success, because so often we tie success into these grand achievements or a certain amount of money. We have this outside thing that these standards that are set by the outside world is where I'm going. And that is not what success is. Success is going inward, and it is figuring out, what does it mean? And I love the word self-check, because it's going back to those basics. What do I want for my family? What do I want for my work? What do I want my leisure time to be like? Because you can have a successful life and it's built on, say, you're successful in your hobbies. You really pour yourself into them. It provides you a ton of enjoyment, and therefore you feel content and joyful in life. And yes, that is very successful. So a couple more things on the failure is not an option that I feel is really important. Is my number one thing I say about failure is it's not trying. Failure is not trying. And I've always believed that you learn more from your failures than you do from your wins, because failure causes us to stop and pause and ask ourselves some questions. I need this time to regroup. I need this time to redirect. Well, where am I going? This didn't work. What will work? What can I try new? It's looking at failure as an experiment. It's not an end all. Well, I'm done. Throw in the towel. It's recentering. But I will say, I said the redirect, regroup, recenter. Do you know what failure does not have in it? And that is regret. Because if you are showing up for yourself, you're constantly going back out there, I believe that we will live with way less regret. And that regret can creep in and cause us just to feel like failure. So when you feel like a failure, it's really hard to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And speaking of putting one foot in front of the other, I remember when I first started on my whole life coaching journey, you want to get out there, any endeavor. Think of a project at home. Think of a new relationship. Think of any new goal or achievement that you have that's inside of you, and it's just bursting and bubbling to get out. You want it now. I want it instant, and I want it big. And how often we're told, baby steps. Baby steps, just slow and steady wins the race, correct? And it's hard. It is so hard. Casey also held up a sticky note during our interview, and it said, slow down. And what a fabulous sticky note to keep around your house, because at work, wherever you are, in your car, because balance also looks different. And slowing down usually makes us more productive because we're more calculated in the decisions that we're making, and we make more right decisions, and we think about our direction and where is my passions? Where are they calling me? What are my next steps? And they come to you, and they don't get clouded when we are slowing down. It was funny because she talked about how she's always been a grinder, and that's a great thing to have that drive. And now she finds more, downtime rejuvenates her, but that downtime can also look like being productive in a different way. She mentioned cleaning, purging out her closet. And even, she laughs about the time that she spends with family. And sometimes that's just that forced family fun. But it is slowing down, backing away sometimes, and finding, I want to say it's kind of like our footsteps again. Because I do go back to, it's finding our path, redirecting and getting ourselves back on our own course. And when we are on our own course, we are more productive and we do make less mistakes. We also talk about keeping your eye on the prize. So my question to you is, what is your prize? Do you know? Have you defined your prize? Because the outside world is full of prizes, right? Here's what you need. Here's what you want. Here's what you should have. And then we find ourselves striving for those things that truly don't matter. And we do. We live feeling like failures every day because we don't have all of those things that the outside world is telling us we should or supposed to have to feel worthy, successful. So, when it comes to failing, I think one of the big takeaways I want you to think about is getting your power back. And getting your power back is going back to the basics. Like I've said, you learn your most valuable lessons from your failures. So write it down. Take your power back. What have you learned from your failures? And are they your failures or are they someone else's failure? When we define failure, we also define success. And I think that defining your success is more important because you automatically move in the direction that creates that feeling of success. And you can work off of that momentum. So I hope this little pep talk about failure and success helps you to keep going because failure is not an option. We have to keep showing up. And the most important person we ever need to keep showing up for is ourselves. You benefit, and believe me, everyone beyond you also benefits. As always, I'm rooting for you. Be real, be raw, be authentic. Thank you so much for being here as we kick off this podcast together. I really appreciate you joining me on this journey because I'm well aware you could be doing or listening to anything right now. Hey, if you enjoy the Authentically Raw content, please support the show by following, rating, and reviewing on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. You can also follow me on social media for daily inspiration. Head over to my website, jamieberris.com, to sign up for weekly transformation tips. Or if you're interested in coaching, I currently have 3 openings for one-on-one coaching. If you're looking for an empowering community, we'd love for you to join us in the Transformation Tribe, our group coaching membership. More info available on my website under the Life Coaching and Membership tabs. One last thing, I'm rooting for you. Be real, be raw, be authentic.